All right, we'll get started. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Classroom Supply Grant for Visual and Performing Arts informational webinar. I'm Chandra Boyd, Deputy Director for the Oklahoma Arts Council, the official state agency for the support and development of the arts in Oklahoma. I've been with the agency a little over 7 years, and I am proud to have been involved in the development of our agency's new strategic plan, launched this year, that features a standalone goal to advance arts education in Oklahoma. This includes investing in quality arts education programs and ensuring equitable access statewide. To this end, we are excited to offer this classroom supply grant opportunity to meet the critical need of schools in our state. On the webinar today, we have Arts Education Director Jennifer Allen Barron and Grants Director Thomas Tran. Can each of you start by telling a little bit about yourselves and your roles at the agency? Jennifer?
Hi, I'm Jennifer Allen Barron. I'm the Arts Education Director here, and I have also been here a little over 7 years. So I am pleased to be part of this team. I work with school partnerships and grants, programs, and resources for schools across the state. It's an exciting role.
Jennifer. Thomas.
Hi, everyone. My name is Thomas Tran. I'm the Grants Director here at Oklahoma Arts Council. I've been with the agency for about 5 years. And in my role, I oversee our agency's grant programs, working with Heidi Casello, the Grants and Programs Assistant, and the rest of our team. We work together to develop grant programs, review grant applications, and finding opportunities for growth through public investment for the arts. I also provide guidance and technical support to all of our applicants and grantees as they apply for grant funding.
Great, thank you. Well, just quickly for review, I'd like to provide a bit of Zoom housekeeping to get us started. In the upper right corner of your Zoom screen, you have the option to click on View for a standard view, a side-by-side view with the speaker, or a side-by-side with the gallery, or you can select the full screen option depending on how you want to set up your screen view. All participants on this webinar are muted, but if you have questions, please type those in the Q&A box located at the bottom right corner of your Zoom screen. I'll be monitoring the Q&A and direct questions to Jennifer and Thomas at the end of our presentation. At this time, I would like to turn it over to Arts Education Director Jennifer Allen Barron to provide an overview of today's agenda. Jennifer.
Yes, hello. Thank you, Chandra, and thank you for that great introduction. And let's jump right into the webinar. So to give you an idea of the goals and structure for today, here's a quick at-a-glance agenda. I'll start with a brief overview of other grants offered by the Oklahoma Arts Council for schools. We'll walk through how to apply for our agency's grants, what questions you will see on the classroom supply grant application, go through a few frequently asked questions, and introduce you to some additional resources for schools. We will have time for questions and answers at the end, but please note that you can ask questions in that Q&A box at any time. As Chandra mentioned, she's going to be keeping an eye on it. As a reminder, this webinar is being recorded. A recording will be available on our website soon, so if you miss something or if you want to pass this on to someone else that could benefit from it, let them know and they can view it soon. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our Grants Director, Thomas Tran, for some information about how our grants work.
Hi, everyone. This is Thomas again. I just want to provide a quick overview of our grant funding. So Oklahoma Arts Council is the state agency for the support and development of the arts. And through that, we invest in communities all across the state through our grant funding to support arts programming, educational, as well as community-based programs. We're able to provide grant funding to different types of organizations. And on the screen here, you can just see a few of those. So we are able to provide funding to 501c3 arts nonprofits, and of course the schools, K through 12 schools, public schools, charter schools, and private non-religious schools, public libraries, colleges and universities, and other agencies of government as well. And we do this through our different grant programs. And you can see that on the screen right here, just a quick list of some of our grant programs. You can find a complete list of our grant programs on our website. All of these grant programs have their own different guidelines, different deadlines that appear throughout the year. So if you're interested, give our website a visit at arts.ok.gov, where you can find more information about these. I'll hand it right back over to Jennifer Allen Barron with Grants for Schools.
Thank you, Thomas. So while today's webinar will cover classroom supply grants for the most part, we do offer a few other grants to schools, so I wanted to mention them briefly. Small grant support for schools can pay for the cost of an artist residency or a professional development experience for arts educators. Arts and alternative education grants work very similarly to the small grants for schools, with an exception being the site match. Most of our nonprofits are required to meet a 50% or a one-to-one match for our grants. The cash match for schools is only 10%, and schools classified by the State Department of Education as an alternative school site only need to meet a 5% match. Some examples of residencies that might be possible through these grants include an artist who might be able to bring a specialized skill. If you have an existing visual arts class, but you'd like to bring someone who can teach paper marbling, for example, or screen printing. A instrumentalist that can bring a type of instrumental instruction that isn't always offered, for example, a woodwind or percussion specialist. We've also seen these schools use these grants to hire a choreographer for a school musical experience, to hold district-wide professional developments experiences for arts teachers, and to create partnerships between a school and a nearby arts or culture nonprofit. There are lots of ways to use these grants, and if you have an idea, I'd love to talk to you more, but for now, let's talk about the classroom supply grant. So as Thomas mentioned, the schools that are eligible to apply here are public schools, public charter schools, and non-religious private schools. Unlike most of our other grants, nonprofits, colleges, universities, and other entities are not eligible to apply for this grant. Each school in these categories can apply for up to $500 in reimbursement towards the cost of consumable art supplies. These can include supplies that are used for fine arts instruction in any discipline: dance, drama, music, and visual arts. We'll get further into the definition of consumable supplies in a minute. These grants can also be used for distance learning projects or for cleaning products that are used to make sure students can safely participate in the arts. So those are a few examples. If this information so far sounds like this grant is a good fit for your school, then you may be curious how you can apply. Well, the first step in applying for any grant that the Oklahoma Arts Council offers is to request a login for your organization, for your school, district, or your individual school. Thomas Strand, our grants director, is here to tell us more about that process.
Thank you, Jennifer. This is Thomas again, and I'll just tell you a little bit more about the application process and then how to get into our grant system to apply for this classroom supply grant. So just as a quick overview into our application process, after you're able to get access to the grant system and submit an application, we will review the application, and from there, we will send out award notifications. The contract will be accepted, and that's when you'll be able to purchase supplies and complete a final report, and that's when the grant payment will happen at the end. We'll recap this process again at the end of the presentation, but we'll dive into the first step. So submitting a login request. What is this? Submitting a login request is whenever you are trying to get access into our grant system. Now, if your school has already applied for a classroom supply grant or a small grant support for schools or arts alternative education grant with us in the past 3 years, then you do not have to complete this process again. But if your school is new, then you will have to create an account with us through our website at arts.ok.gov. Once you get to our website, you'll navigate to the grant system login request page, and this is what it will look like. We will just ask you for a few information about what your school is and what you're interested for funding, and we'll ask you to upload a document just letting us know who you are and helping us get you set up in our grant system. If you're unsure if you have login credentials to our grant system, you can give us a call or send us an email, and we'll be happy to help you out there and find out some more information. So once you're on this page, we'll ask you for some details about your school, where your school is, the address, and who your contacts will be. So in our grant system, we ask for 2 separate contacts for each school. We ask for an authorizing official and a grant contact. The authorizing official is the person who, if your grant is selected for funding, this is the person who will review and accept the grant contract on behalf of your school or your school district. This is usually a superintendent, a principal, or a grant writer for your district, and whoever this individual is may depend on your schools or your district's policies. There's only one authorizing official for each school. And the other contact that we use is the grant contact. Now, this person is the only individual who can submit grant applications and complete reports for your schools. They're also the primary contact for your school. They receive notifications and announcements about our grant opportunities. This can be a teacher. It's also sometimes an administrator or a school grant writer. There's only one grant contact for each school as well. All right, some things to note as you're going through this login request process. You can have a separate login for each school site. And this is so that we keep track of each school, but also this really maximizes each school's ability to apply for grants. So in your district, each school is eligible to come in and receive one classroom supply grant per school site. The login request process is only for new schools or schools that haven't come in for the past 3 years. So again, if you have already been receiving Arts Council funding in the past 3 years, then you do not have to complete this process again. If you're a returning school, then you can just visit our website at arts.ok.gov and log into the grant system. If there have been some new changes in positions, or if you are unsure of what your login is, you can reach out to us at grants@arts.ok.gov, and we will be happy to help you out there. If you have any questions during this process, please feel free to type it into the Q&A box, and we'll get to them at the end of this presentation. And I will hand it over to Jennifer.
All right, thank you, Thomas. So thank you for all that great information. So if you are on the fence about whether or not you would like to apply for one of these grants, I would recommend going ahead and starting that process of requesting a login unless you already have one. Back to the classroom supply grant. So sometimes when I mention classroom fine art supplies to educators or groups of educators, I think that people first assume that these primarily apply to visual arts classrooms. And it's true that visual arts, we see lots of requests for supplies for visual arts classrooms, but that's not the only discipline. Any fine arts discipline that's recognized by the State Department of Education is teachers in those disciplines can apply for these grants. So here I have a slide that gives you some ideas of what might be considered allowable supplies in a dance classroom. Licensing fees, costuming fees for costumes which are certainly not able to be used again after a performance, any kind of materials that could create props, and then also, most of these fine arts classrooms also have basic classroom needs such as pencils, markers, and paper. In addition, cleaning supplies for any discipline. Those are all examples of allowable expenses, allowable supply expenses. Next slide, please. For drama and theater, again, we see costume supplies, sheet music, script usage fees, royalty fees, props, and these kinds of things. A lot of similarities are between the kinds of supplies that we could use these funds for dance and for drama. Next slide, please. For music, sheet music we do consider that a consumable expense because they do wear out over time. It's not a permanently held type of thing. We can pay for rented musical instruments, but we cannot pay for a school to purchase and then own musical instruments, but we can pay for them to be rented. We can also pay for them to be repaired or for tuning and maintenance costs. Also, for other types of instruments, there are consumable expenses such as reeds, rosin, cleaning cloths, these kinds of things. So think along these lines for music supplies for a request. Next slide. And then of course, visual arts, lots of examples here that I think are come to mind very easily. Drawing supplies, painting supplies. So think about paint and paintbrushes, canvases, but not an easel, not something that's going to live after the school year is done, after the project is complete. I'll just kind of let you, I'm not going to read through all of these, but here are some representative examples of different kinds of visual art supplies that you could include in a project, in a request for the classroom supply grants. So hopefully these examples will get your mind working along the lines of what you can request funding for. Next slide, please. All right, so here is the actual application. We've done a lot of talking about how to apply, what are the goals. These are the actual 6 questions that you will see once you're able to access the application. Only 2 questions of these 6 require a written narrative response. The first question, how much would you like to request? You can put any number in there up to $500. Pretty self-explanatory. Which disciplines will benefit from the supplies? So you'll see 4 options there: dance, drama or theater, music, and visual arts. You may select one or more than one, but your school must have at least one part-time instructor in each selected discipline in order for you to request supplies for that discipline. Number 3, we will ask you how many students receiving arts instruction will directly benefit from this funding. And number 4 is, what is the total student body of your school? Most likely this will not be the same number. Most likely it might be a smaller number who are receiving the benefits of this funding, but in some cases, in some schools, we may see projects where the entire student body are able to participate. So, make sure to be really specific there. How many students are benefiting, and then what is the total student body of your school? Number 5, this is the first narrative question. How will this funding help your school present arts curriculum that meets state and national standards in each selected discipline? We have brand new, well, sort of brand new, they were adopted in May of 2020, fine art standards in all 4 subjects for the first time, all 4 of the artistic disciplines. And you can go to sde.ok.gov to find those standards and then select the standards that your project will meet and then enter those into this response. You can just go right to the list and do a little copy pasting if you like, but you will refer to those standards that are listed on the State Department of Education's website. Last but not least, how will this funding impact your students? This is a great chance for you to make your case for why this funding is important for your school. What will your students be able to do through these funds that they might not be able to do without them? What are your hopes for this project? What are your hopes for this funding? What kind of things are you going to make possible? Please feel free to tell a story there, within the limits of the character limits there. But this is a great opportunity for you to make a case for the importance of this funding for your specific school. That is it. Next slide, please. All right, at the end of your application, you will come to this screen and you will see a button that asks if you are sure that you want to submit. Be sure to click this. I know this probably sounds like a very straightforward thing, and it might seem like you have to click yes a couple of times, but please go ahead and click and click again and make sure that your application is complete. You will see a little notification that says success, I believe, once that's done. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and contact our office. And by the time you get to the screen, you may be thinking, of course I'm going to submit. What an odd question to pop up. But this is something that happens more often than you might think. So just in the interest of due diligence and covering everything completely as we can, please make sure that you have hit that final submit button. Remember, we want you to have this funding. It doesn't do us any good. We want it to go to your school and your students. Next slide, please. As you're working on your application, it probably will be important to you to keep in mind the review criteria that we will use to make funding recommendations. So criteria number 1, the allowability of requested supplies. If we see the request going to things like building a stage or purchasing band uniforms or something that is not a consumable supply or maybe not art related or maybe other, it's just not, kind of along the lines of those items I discussed earlier. That'll be something that could raise a flag for reviewers. So if you have questions about whether or not your idea is allowable, you can contact me and I'll be happy to talk it over with you. My contact information will be at the end of this slideshow. The second item under the top review criteria is a school's commitment to arts instruction. Schools must show how they are committed to ongoing high quality arts instruction by 2 things. First of all, I've mentioned indicating that they have at least 1 part-time instructor in each discipline in which that you're asking for funding. And then number 2, explaining in the grant application how this request, these supplies, will help the teacher to present curriculum that meets our state and or national fine art standards. So 2 things we've already covered before. So easy peasy, you've got that down. The second review criteria is a school's ability to create equitable access to arts education. The Oklahoma Arts Council will prioritize funding for schools that serve the following: rural counties, schools in rural counties, which we are defining as counties with fewer than 50,000 residents, students in under-resourced communities, schools where at least 70% of students are eligible for Title I assistance, and then culturally diverse communities where the demographics are significantly different from state averages. So those are some examples of the types of data that we look at to determine equitability in the way we distribute these funds. And let's see, next slide, please. Well, I think we've already covered this one, so let's just keep on rolling. All right, so next, this slide is for Thomas. So Thomas, I will turn the floor back to you.
Hi again, everyone. I'm here to talk about the award management. So the grant application process. After you've submitted your grant application and it's reviewed before a panel, we then make award determinations, and then we send out the awards. Award notifications by email. So the grant award notifications will be issued in October of 2021 for this fall cycle. So if your school is selected to receive a classroom supply grant, you'll receive an email from our grants office notifying you of the award. Both your school's grant contact and your authorizing official will receive that email. From then, please read through the email. If you receive one, the authorizing official will need to take action. We ask that the authorizing official sign into the grant system and review and accepts the grant contract. This is the school accepting the grant contract on behalf of the school, between the school or the school district and Oklahoma Arts Council, accepting all the terms of what they're agreeing to execute this project and purchasing the supplies. All of the detail and information that you need to manage your grant award can be found in the email that you receive for the award notification, or you can visit our website and it will be on the grant program page website as well. Managing your grant award. So what happens in order for you to get the grant and get the payment at the end? After your authorizing official accepts the grant contract, you can go ahead and purchase your supplies. And after you do that, you please go through your schools or your district's purchasing policies. But after you purchase your supplies, then you can fill out a final report through the grant system. Again, the grant contact is the only individual who can access the report and submit that. We also ask you to send in support material, which includes thank you letters to your school's state legislators. More information about that process can be found in your email as well. If you have questions about managing your grant award, please feel free to contact us. You can contact me directly. My information is there on the screen, or you can find it at the end of this presentation as well. All of these steps are needed to be completed in order for your grant payment to process. So these are reimbursed grants. So we do ask that you purchase the supplies and go through that process before you submit your final report to us, and then we'll cut the grant payment at the end. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop that in the Q&A box. All right, we'll transition here into our frequently asked questions.
Yeah, so these are some of the questions that we have been asked previously about this grant. So I'm just gonna roll these off, and Jennifer, let's hear what your thoughts are on these. So who purchases the supplies?
Oh, great question. The schools must purchase their own supplies. The Oklahoma Arts Council will not be purchasing the supplies for you. So you will request these funds, purchase the supplies, and then submit your final report, and then be paid on a reimbursement basis.
Great. Are the funds provided before or after they purchase the supplies?
Funds are provided after you have purchased the supplies and you have submitted that final report through our grant system. You can log into our grant system beginning in, I believe, March. Is it March? To complete the final report, March 1st, to complete the final report. And then you need to submit the final report in order, by early spring. I'd see April 1st here. Payment is processed after we receive and review your final report, along with the support material, which is a letter to your state legislators informing them about the project. So once we receive that report and support material, we can review it, and then your report is processed for payment. It can take up to 6 weeks to process that.
Thanks. And what supplies can they purchase?
Oh, well, great question. Once again, we've gone over what are considered allowable types of supplies. Basically, they are items that are purchased for a classroom that are used up or significantly altered during the course of arts instruction. They can include cleaning supplies or classroom supplies that are necessary for the delivery of arts education. They can also include specifically art supplies. And if you have a question about is something eligible or allowable, I would love to talk to you about your specific ideas and help you answer that question.
Great. This is another good one. Do schools need to use specific vendors?
No, schools can purchase their supplies from any vendor because you're doing your own purchasing. The Oklahoma Arts Council does not provide any list of established vendors. For this grant, we also do not require information about your vendors. So you should follow if your district or your specific school has policies about the places you purchase items from, you need to go ahead and follow those. But beyond that, we don't have any specific restrictions on where the items can be purchased from.
Great. This is another good one. Do I need to tell the Oklahoma Arts Council what we purchase?
For the grant application and the grant final report, be prepared to describe in general what your school has purchased and how students benefited. The grant is designed to be relatively simple, and so we haven't asked for a complete itemized list. As with all Oklahoma Arts Council grants, we do require that you keep receipts from your purchases, but please don't send those to us unless we ask. We need for you to hang on to those receipts just in case we are audited or we need those receipts for some other internal reason.
Yeah.
But you do not need to send those to us.
Great. And when will they receive the funds?
So you will receive the funds after you've submitted that final report. The final report will be available on our website as soon as your authorizing official accepts the contract. I think I had some incorrect information earlier identifying some dates in the spring, but here I see that it is available as soon as the authorizing official accepts the contract. You're going to log in, complete the final report, and send copies of your legislator letters. And then, as I mentioned, payment will be processed after that fact, and it could take up to 6 weeks to process.
How will they know when the funds have been paid?
So this is going to be different from district to district. We recommend that you stay in contact with your school or district finance office about the arrival of the payment. In larger districts, they may all go into a common, a general fund. And, you know, if the finance department isn't looking out for it, they may not know where to direct those funds. So if you receive notice that you've been awarded this fund, I recommend you contact that district finance office and make sure that, you know, everything's in order for, as soon as they receive it, for those funds to be routed to the correct place.
What do we do if our school would like to request funds for more than one discipline? This comes up often.
It does. So in this case, a school can only apply for and receive one of these classroom supply grants per year. But if you would like to split these funds between two different disciplines, you're allowed to do that. You can select more than one discipline in the application, and then you can just describe briefly the types of supplies that will be used for each discipline. And because of this, we really encourage teachers to collaborate among the other fine arts faculty in their school on how to maximize this award for all the students to participate and benefit from.
Great, and I think you just answered this, but can the school apply in both the fall semester and the spring semester?
Great question. This year and last year, this grant was offered twice, but a school can only apply for and receive this grant one time per academic year. So one grant per school per year.
Thanks, Jennifer.
You're welcome. And let's see, next slide, please, I believe. All right, so here's a brief timeline of the classroom supply grants for the current fiscal year. The applications are now open and they will close on September 15th at 5:00 p.m. So keep that deadline in mind for the fall. If you aren't able to get everything in for the fall, we do have another cycle coming up in the spring. The award notifications will be coming out in October, and then the final reports will be due for November in the fall. And then you'll see in the spring, we have yet to firm up those dates, but please look to the early January to see that springtime supply grant open up. And then the rest of those deadlines sort of as follows, that pattern. See, if you're, well, I believe I have some additional items here, but I believe I've already said them. So please continue to advance the slides. So in addition to this grant and the other grants that I mentioned at the top of the webinar, we have some other resources that you can take advantage of for your classroom. We have a teaching artist roster that includes about 60 different artists in different disciplines, visual and performing arts. You can get a sampling there in this picture. And so these artists have been doing this some of them are brand new to the roster. Some of the artists have been doing this for decades. All of them have been fully vetted in order to be listed on the website. And, you know, they would be a great resource if you're looking to bring a new kind of art form to your classroom, but you're not quite sure where to start. These are a great group of folks to turn to. Next, we have the online fine arts curriculum. And this is a resource that we launched last year. And we developed this as a way to bring arts experiences to students who were learning at home. So all of the fine arts curriculum lessons on our website there are designed for people to take advantage of at home. They could also be used by in the classroom, or if you have a substitute leading your classroom, you know, that could be another another way for these fine arts curriculum items to be used. They're going to expand in the next couple of months. So take a look there. That's all on our website at arts.ok.gov. The online fine arts curriculum. We have 14 different lesson plans in all 4 disciplines for all different age levels. So lots there for your students or any other folks you know who may want to have an arts experience at their home. And next we have questions. Do we have any questions in the Q&A box?
So yeah, we had a few questions come in and I'll read those. And then at this time, if anyone else has any questions and they want to type those in, we'll answer those as well. Let's see, we had a question, would clay, glazes, and ceramic tools qualify?
That's a great question. I know that clay and glazes are definitely considered consumable items. As far as the tools, I think it would depend if they're like a tool that, if it's some, you know, it kind of, is that something that's used more as equipment or used as a consumable item that is kind of transformed in some way? And so I would kind of leave that question back to the person who asked it and say, it just sort of depends on what exactly is that they're referring to as ceramic tools. But the clay and glazes, for sure, those would be consumable items.
Thanks. Is the information requested for login access needed for the school site or the school district?
So you can apply as a district if you want to, but I think you really get more bang for your application buck if you apply as each individual school site. And you certainly have the ability to do that. So each school site can apply and get their own information. You might find that within a district, you might share an authorizing official. I know that some of the larger districts will share an authorizing official for all schools in the district, but that's kind of that's a decision that's really made at the district level. So that would depend on what your district administration, how they would like to handle that. But yes, each individual school site can get their own, can do their own login request and get their own login.
Great. So we had another question, and I think we might just need to get more information about this individual request, but what about a private K-12 school associated with a university? Yeah,
I think I would need a little bit more information about what specifically that relationship is between that private school and that university, and I'd love to talk to that person more, maybe on a one-on-one basis, and dive deeper into that to be sure I give him the right info.
Yeah, well, I don't see any other questions. So if we do want to advance to the contact information slide, they can go ahead and make note of your contact information. Heidi was not able to join us on the call today, but she would be your point of contact for anything related to your logins and managing your account in our grant system.
All right, so yes, please bookmark our website at arts.ok.gov, and you can find a lot more information there about this grant, other school grants, and other programs and services that we offer. In the meantime, we are here to help however we can. Although she isn't here today, as Chandra mentioned, Heidi's the best person to go to with questions about your login requests. You can contact Thomas with questions about managing your grant award, and you can contact me, Jennifer, with questions about your project, writing and submitting your grant, or about allowability of potential supply items. Once again, this webinar is being recorded and will be available soon. Next slide. So thank you for attending. We look forward to working with you as you craft your application. Thanks again for being here and happy grant writing.
Thanks, everyone.